The proposed multi-billion-dollar settlement of 3 athlete compensation antitrust cases against the NCAA and Power 5 conferences has entered a critical stage. While it survived initial legal challenges, it now faces a wave of organized objections and individual concerns as a federal judge in Northern California considers final approval. More than 35 formal objections or comment letters were filed before Friday night's deadline. Among the most notable objectors is LSU gymnast and social media star Olivia Dunne. Her filing was submitted without legal representation, and she did not mention her school or sport, but an LSU spokesperson confirmed her involvement. Dunne included 7 detailed bullet points and requested to be heard during the final approval hearing on April 7. Meanwhile, 76 athletes who opted out of the proposed settlement have launched a new antitrust lawsuit against the NCAA and conferences. Former Mississippi State running back Kylin filed the case in the same Northern California district that has seen several high-profile NCAA lawsuits. The proposed settlement includes a $2.8 billion damages pool for current and former athletes over 10 years. It also lays the groundwork for Division I schools to pay athletes directly for using their name, image, and likeness, subject to a gradually increasing per-school cap. Schools that opt into the new NIL structure would also see long-standing scholarship limits replaced by roster size restrictions, potentially eliminating hundreds or thousands of Division I roster spots. The settlement also grants the NCAA new oversight powers, allowing it to enforce rules on NIL deals between athletes and third-party entities. These proposed changes have sparked a wide range of objections, including the impact of roster limits on athletes who may lose their spots and whether implementation could be phased over several years. Concerns that the damages allocation discriminates against female athletes in violation of Title IX, as the plan heavily favors football and men's basketball players. Whether replacing one compensation cap with another is simply another illegal restraint on athlete earnings. Questions exist about whether the plaintiffs' attorneys, who stand to collect more than $750 million in fees, can adequately represent the diverse interests of all affected athletes. Objections have come from both well-known and lesser-known figures. In addition to Dunne, Florida State quarterback Thomas Castellanos, formerly of Boston College, former Kansas basketball star Frank Mason III, and former TCU basketball player Chuck O'Bannon have joined the opposition. Several attorneys specializing in Title IX and sports economics have also weighed in, as have a handful of current college coaches. Even the federal government has played a role. Before President Donald Trump's inauguration, the Justice Department's Antitrust Division filed a document arguing against final approval unless certain conditions were met. Additionally, the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights has issued guidance on how long-standing Title IX policies apply to direct payments from schools to athletes. It remains unclear whether the Biden administration will maintain this involvement, as key officials from the original filing are no longer with the Justice Department. The Education Department's leadership has also changed. Ultimately, U.S. District Judge Claudia Wilkin will decide the settlement's fate. Many of the same objections were raised during the preliminary approval phase, and Wilkin largely dismissed them. Although she initially rejected the settlement, her concerns differed from those expressed by objectors. After attorneys revised the agreement to address her issues, she allowed it to proceed. Steve Berman, one of the lead attorneys for the plaintiffs, remains confident. Many of the objections are reiterations of what Wilkin saw and overruled in preliminary approval, he told USA Today News Sports. He acknowledged that some arguments now have more detailed legal backing but believes Wilkin will still rule in favor of the settlement. With something as emotional as this, people are not all going to agree, Berman said. But is the overall settlement fair? I think she's going to say yes. His team has until March 3rd to respond to the objections formally. We're coming out swinging, Berman said.